Welcome to today's episode of Molecules to Medicine podcast. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are AI Jules and we specialize in helping healthcare and life science companies scale their business and revenue and explore how AI is reshaping industries and accelerating innovation. So if you'd like to learn more on how to take your business to the next level, make sure you stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs and we'll get back to you. I'm your host Hardy, and we have a very exciting guest for you today, Nadine Spring, founder and CEO from Springwell360. Welcome, Nadine.
Thank you, Hardeep. I'm so excited to be here and looking forward to our chat.
And where are you talking to us from today?
I am in the Atlanta, Georgia area.
Fantastic. So Nadine, tell us a bit about your background and your journey that led you to Springwell360 and any pivotal moment or experience that shaped your career.
Sure, I would be happy to. So I ended up working in clinical research fresh out of undergrad as a research assistant. I climbed the ladder while pursuing my academic, higher education and more academic degrees. So I started as a research assistant, became a research coordinator, became research manager, then became director of clinical trials. All along the way, I acquired my master's in public health. Then I wanted to do more work in clinical research. I pursued a master's in clinical research and then completed my PhD in public health. One of the things I kept realizing as I worked in clinical research was that the participants in many of these clinical trials came from a very homogeneous group. It wasn't diverse. There were many underserved populations missing in these clinical trials. So for instance, if you had a medical condition and there was a clinical trial being conducted and this medical condition disproportionately affects women of color, what I saw was that often in these clinical trials, the demographics of these clinical trials did not really make up the demographics of the people living day to day with the conditions. But yet you have medications, diagnostic tools, medical devices being approved all the time without really having a representative sample of participants in the clinical trials. So how do we really know if the therapy, the medication is safe and effective in these populations? We don't really know, right? And so I saw the need for more representation in clinical trials. I mean, we've known this for decades that, we need more representation in these trials, we need more diversity, underserved populations are not really participating, and it really does a disservice, especially when it comes to advancing medical care and advancements in some of these communities. And so I launched Springwell360 to help to address that need, raise awareness of clinical trials as an option to care, especially for underserved populations, raise awareness of the need for more diversity in clinical research. So I train clinical research sites, train clinical research coordinators. I also launched my book, Mastering Clinical Research, last year. It's on Amazon. And that book was written as a way to help to get more underrepresented populations into the field of clinical research. And again, there's so many ways you can work in the field of clinical research as well. You can work like I did at the site level. You can work at a clinical research organization. You can work in the labs. You can work in contracting. You can work, at the pharmaceutical company. There's so much that can be done. But that was my pathway that led me towards launching Springwell360.
Fantastic. And congratulations on the book. That sounds awesome. And what target audience is the book for?
So I would say the book could be for students, both high school and college, people who may be phlebotomists or medical assistants or foreign medical grads who want to enter into the field of clinical research. So for instance, if you're a phlebotomist or a medical assistant, your career may plateau at a certain point. However, if you can use those same skills, your phlebotomy skills, your medical assisting skills, to then, if you have the right training and the aptitude to go into the field of clinical research where you can climb a ladder. There's a career pathway. You can become site manager, you can become, assistant director, even vice president. You can go on to launch your own company like I did. So the ceiling is much higher going that pathway traditionally, right? So those would be my target audience for the book.
Okay, great. And what does what problem does Springwell360 solve, and why does it matter to your customers?
Sure. So this solves the problem of underrepresentation in clinical research, and this matters because there are so many health disparities and health equity concerns right now in our world. We know that the care many people in underserved communities receive, it's not equal. And clinical trials is one of the ways that we can advance that needle forward into a world where there is more equitable care.
Okay, fantastic. And so is it a coaching? Is it coaching that you're providing for clinical sites and PIs and study
Right,
coordinators?
I do consulting with them, training their sites on GCPs, which is good clinical practices, how to recruitment, training, all of that covering for successful recruitment of underrepresented populations in clinical research for their sites.
And do you work with the sponsors as well that are running these trials?
I have not yet, mostly with the clinical research sites and people who want to enter into the clinical research field, but I have not worked with sponsors yet.
Okay. Is that something you would consider?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, the reason I say is that because one of my roles as a study manager, I was responsible for actually looking at the demographics of a clinical trial to see what populations of ethnicity have been recruited and in which countries. So, like you say, it's very important to be able to ensure that the drug you're testing is going to be approved for a lot of the population it's going to be treating as well. So one of my roles was to actually make sure that we are getting enough of that. So I think it'd be great if this could work with sponsors as well on the other
Absolutely.
side. And can you share any real examples of how a customer has used Springwell360 to achieve meaningful results?
So, there's a clinical research site not too far from where I live, and they reached out to me for help with recruiting. They were recruiting for one of their trials, and the reality is that recruitment methods cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach, right? We have to realize that the mistrust, the lack of participation from certain underrepresented groups stems from something. Some groups have been exploited. There's been historical injustices done in the name of research, and we can't pretend that that didn't happen. So we really need to address that to help to rebuild the trust. We know the story of, for instance, Henrietta Lacks, where her cells were taken without her consent, and pharmaceutical companies made billions off of them, right? For decades. We know what happened with the Tuskegee syphilis study. And so we have to address those, but while also informing the community and working in partnerships with churches, local organizations, nonprofits in the area to raise awareness that what clinical research is like now, that exploitation that happened before, really there are things in place to prevent it from happening now. There are ethics committees, there are, members of the committee serving members. So being able to come in and train and also redo some of their recruitment materials so it's more targeted for the populations that they're trying to reach. I've worked with some sites where they were able to enroll and over-enroll when it came to reaching underrepresented populations. And had I not stepped in, they probably would have still struggled to meet those target numbers for their pharmaceutical company.
All right, fantastic. So you really help with patient recruitment, so participant recruitment into clinical trials. So are you identifying these potential participants? So do you have your own database where you could have potential participants with any certain type of disease indication, or is it mainly just on the sort of material side for sites to use to sort of advertise?
So a little bit of both. I share it within my network, but also on the site to share it within theirs. So a little bit of both.
Okay, great. And what's been the biggest challenge or bottlenecks that you face in getting your product out there, your training and your coaching out there?
Sure, I would say the biggest one would probably be imposter syndrome, right? Sometimes there's a feeling of, who am I to step in and want to move this needle forward? But I see that we're making a lot of great strides, a lot of progress. We've always known, and we've known for decades, that the homogeneity in clinical research was a problem. We needed diverse participants, right? But nothing was really done about it. But now I go to conferences and I see entire sections devoted to diversity in clinical research, representation in clinical research. So I know that the needle is being moved forward, and I know that there is, some sort of impact in the community towards achieving that goal and towards coming closer towards achieving health equity.
And these other companies that you see at conferences that are working to increase diversity, what are they doing to address the...
So I see that some of them are having diversity plans. You asked me earlier, have I worked with one of the pharmaceutical companies? No. I did get in conversations with someone at a CRO, but it never evolved into anything. It looks like there was a funding issue. But I do know that there is, there are diversity plans being done. But sometimes I do feel as if they're having the wrong people at the table to make these decisions, right? I see sometimes where decisions are being made for underserved communities, but not a single member of an underserved community served on that committee to make the decisions. So I do feel as if sometimes they need to revisit some of their strategies. I've seen situations where they had childcare and transportation provided, but it still wasn't enough to meet the representation goals. They incorporated members of the communities that they were trying to reach, they would have known that simply providing childcare and transportation was not sufficient. You still have to look at the mistrust that happened, the injustices, and now you have to inform people of how things have changed, what's going to protect them, because that mistrust is still there.
Okay, so it sounds like the main thing really is to actually build trust then within certain communities around clinical trials in order to enable them to participate. Okay, great. And what makes Springwell360 different from others trying to solve the same problem?
I would say because I've lived it. I'm not someone just looking in from the outside. I've absolutely lived it. I've lived the health equity concerns. I've lived through health disparities. It's my day-to-day as a woman of color in the United States. And so just my passion and wanting to make a difference is what makes us different from some of the other companies.
Okay, and what's next then for Springwell360? What stage are you at now? How do you see yourselves evolving over the next few years?
In terms of what's next, I really want to launch a community on Springwell360 where we're dedicated towards advancing health equity. Where we have other public health professionals, clinical research professionals in this community, where we're launching new roles, new partnerships, new products, all towards advancing health equity for underserved communities and moving that needle forward for better health outcomes in our communities.
Okay, great. Sounds like a very excellent project. And what would growth look like though for you over the next 12 months in terms of clients or new customers?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry.
What does growth look like for you as a business moving forward over the next 12 months?
So growth to me would look, in terms of the community, having at least 100 members in our community, signing new clients, also signing new coaching members for those who want to enter into the field of clinical research or launch a career pathway in the field of clinical research. That's what growth would look like for me. Having a robust team just dedicated towards health equity.
Okay, fantastic. And what current growth channels are working best for you at the moment?
I would say LinkedIn and email marketing.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Nadine. A very good insight into Springwell360 and very good cause as well. Very, very needed to get more diverse participants in clinical trials. And where can people learn more about yourself and your team or get in touch?
Absolutely. So just visit my website, springwell360.com, and that's where you can see our YouTube channel, our Instagram, our LinkedIn, our Facebook. Again, that's www.springwell360.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Nadine. All the best for the future, and great talking to you.
Thank you so much, Hardeep. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.